Do we want to leave that door open?
No, it's too noisy.
Too noisy? Because I don't know if other people know this is where we'll meet. A lot of people supposedly ask us. But we'll wait for it. Okay. So today, piece of paper to erase for. All right. Let us. Did everybody get a handout? Anybody didn't get a handout? Everybody got a handout?
Should we put a sign on the door that says, would that be good? It said it in the bulletin. So
Yeah.
it's just so distracting from this noise out
The Jewish calendar is broken down into 12 months. It starts with the sighting of the new moon. Some of this is going to be technical, so if you want to write down, this will help you later on as you read the Bible. Maybe you will understand. Handouts? Any more handouts? So, the first month of the Jewish calendar is what we call Nisan. Let's change that just a minute, and let's start with something else. Let's start the first month of the Jewish calendar with the month of Tishri. Let's do that first. Yeah, I know, I already confused you, but hang in there. After the month of Tishri comes the month of Keshvan, second month. The third month is the month of Kislev. The fourth month is the month of Tevet. The fifth month is the month of Shevat. The sixth month is the month of Adar. The seventh month is the month of Nisan, not the car. The eighth month is the month of Iyar. The ninth month is the month of Sivan. The 10th month is the month of Tammuz. The 11th month is the month of Av, and the 12th month is the month of Elul. That's the Jewish calendar. So as you go through the Old Testament, when it says a certain month, you can go and start looking at this and understanding which month are we talking about. Now, how does this compare to our Gregorian calendar? Okay, let's look at where Tishri is. Tishri usually happens in September, October time. Okay. So we are now in the month of, right after the month of Tishri actually. We are, second month is October, November, sorry. The third month is November, December. Tevet is December, January. Shevat is January, February. Adar is February, March. Nisan is March. April, May, June, July, August, and August, September. Those are the months and how they overlap with our calendar. So when I say Tishri, you can go and at once look and say, oh, that's September, October time frame for us. Okay? Now, in the month of Tishri, we have three major feasts. First is what is called Rosh Hashanah, and we will go through all this. Rosh Hashanah. Second one is Yom Kippur. And third one is Sukkot. Again, we are using all Jewish terms here. Hebrew terms. Okay? So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, when you read those in the book of Leviticus or in the book of Numbers or so on and so forth, understand right away that in September, October time frame, that's when these things happen. In the month of Tevet, we're going to study Hanukkah. which is again December. Okay? December, January time. For those of you who may want to know, in the month of Adar is when people, the Jews, celebrate Purim. You know what Purim is? The Feast of Esther. Remember Esther? She saved the Jewish people from Haman. And so that's called the Feast of Purim or the Feast of Lots. And so that's celebrated in the February-March time frame. And then in the month of Nisan, we have Passover. We have first fruits. And we have unleavened bread. In the month of Sivan, we have what is called Shavuot, or what in the church we call Pentecost. The month of Av, just for you to know, is the month where the first temple and the second temple were destroyed. They were both destroyed on the same day in Av, except they were like several centuries later. But they happened on the very same day both times. Okay? So that's the Jewish calendar for you. Any questions so far? Very technical detail, but I've got to get through this first before we get into the feast. So you will now know, take this paper out, and when I talk about a feast, you can look at it and say, oh, this is where this falls, this is what this is. So we're going to go through primarily Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Hanukkah. We will not do Purim. We will do Passover, first fruits, unleavened bread, and Shavuot. Those are the feasts we will be covering. Okay? Now, any questions on this so far? Clear as mud? All right. I'm going to erase. Everybody got it? Photographed, whatever, copied, built?
I have a question. These months, they're based on the lunar,
Yes.
so does it mean they cycle through the seasons?
Yes.
So it's not always going to be in August, September.
Yes,
10
it will.
years, 15 years from now.
It will be, because they have adjustments that they do every 10 years to make it very fixed. It's not like the Islamic calendar that's floating around. It's 30 days, 12 months of 30 days each, and then they adjust in 10 years. So for the days that they're missing, so they get it back, they add a month.
Okay. This adjustment, when did they start doing the adjustments? Is it from the beginning or?
Well, in the beginning, I don't know if it was in Genesis 1:1, but I'm not sure. But way back, it's been a long
But
time.
anyway, there's an adjustment.
Yeah.
And I have one question. You can erase.
Questions will be lesser, but go on.
Yeah,
Talk to me one
yes,
because I have a lot of information to cover.
Yeah, just a quick question while you erase. Why aren't you doing Purim?
Purim is, the reason is partly because the feast I'm trying to talk about is the ones that are lowered. It's recorded in the Gospels that he did, and Purim, I'm 100% sure he did it, but it's just not recorded. So if we have time, we can do Purim, but this is the ones I want to really cover because he does major ones.
Okay, the women are all studying Esther, so.
That's a good one. Okay. All right, now, first things first. Do not call these the feasts of Israel, because these are the feasts of God. And there are 7, like I said, 7 major feasts. Okay? And in the Hebrew, the word for feast is actually not the word feast, it's the word moedim. And moedim means appointed times. Okay? These are God's appointed times when He says, I want you to come to my presence. It's called moedim. You can find all 7, if you want to read, in excluding Hanukkah. Hanukkah happened between the Old and the New Testament. It will not be in the Old Testament. It's an intertestamental feast that has started. But the other 7, you can go to Leviticus chapter 23 at your leisure at home, and you can read and pick up the 7 major feasts that God said, I want to meet with you. Okay? All right, now, we are going to start reading a little bit. So let us go to Exodus chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12. And let's start reading in verse 1. Let me get there with my Bible. Exodus 12. Now Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Mitzrayim, this month shall be the beginning of months for you. It is to be the first month of the year for you. Look in your calendars. Where did I say Passover was? Which month did I say Passover was?
Nisan.
The month of Nisan. Is Nisan, according to your calendar, the first month? No, it is the 7th month. But wait a minute, you just read, now Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, this month shall be the beginning of months. He is rearranging the whole calendar to put Nisan as the first spiritual month. So the calendar is, what I just gave you is what is called the civil calendar. Okay? What the Lord is saying is, no, I'm going to institute what is called the spiritual calendar. So Nisan now becomes the first month of the spiritual calendar. We do this also, right? Don't we have more than one calendar? We have January to December, which is your regular fiscal year, right? Then we have school years, right? They don't start January through December. And then we have companies that have fiscal years, right? Instead of calendar years, they have fiscal years. I used to work for FedEx. It was June 1 through May 31. Because Christmas was their heavy season, they didn't want to end then. So the calendar was June 1 through May 31st. So we also have different calendars. So here in Judaism, there is a civil calendar and there is a spiritual calendar. And what the Lord is saying is that this feast is so important. This event is so important that I'm going to take the 7th month of your calendar and make that the first month of your spiritual calendar. You with me? Okay. Now, Israel had been, just a little background, Israel had been in Egypt for a few hundred years, correct? They were in slavery. God sent a deliverer, correct? A person to bring them out. This deliverer happened to be a lawgiver. Is that true? The deliverer is also a lawgiver. The children of Israel were in bondage in Egypt. Okay? The word Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim. And the word Mitzrayim is interesting because the word Mitzrayim in Hebrew means bondage. So they were in bondage in bondage. So when you say we in our spiritual walk are also in bondage, we're technically saying we were in Mitzrayim, we were in Egypt. You see the connection to how we are today. That word literally means bondage.
Can you spell it?
M-I-T-Z, I'm trying to transliterate now. R-A-I-M. M-I-T is Z for the British folks. M-I-T is Z-R-A-I-M for the British folks. All right. Now, so God said, I'm going to send a deliverer, a lawgiver, who's going to set you free. So he sends plagues. Correct? How many plagues did he send? 9 plus 1. Right? The first plague he sent was what? Do you remember?
Change the river,
Water.
the blood.
The first one he did exactly was he turned the Nile into blood. Nile is a god that is being worshipped by the Jewish people, and the name of the god is Hapi. Okay? So the first strike was against the Egyptian god Hapi, or the god of Nile. The second strike was they had a goddess of fertility called Heket. Heket was called the goddess of fertility, and she was symbolized by a frog. You remember the land was covered with frogs. They had too much fertility. They said, it's in our cooking pots. It's everywhere. Please get us out of here, right? Number 2. Number 3, they worshipped the earth, Mother Earth. They called it Geb. And the way they symbolized, they took a little bit of dust in a bowl to symbolize the earth. Well, guess what happened to the dust? They become lice. You remember that? So strike number 3 was against Geb. Strike number 4 was against, they had a god for creation. And they were amazed at how this decomposing stuff would have all these flies coming out of it. And they said, this is how creation happens. Out of nothing, stuff starts decomposing, and we don't know how, but out comes flies. And so they called that the god Kefi. And the symbol for that was flies. Sorry, not Kefi. It's Kefri. Gotta get these gods' names correct. And get mad at me and have flies at me. The next god was their god of protection. It's called God of Hathor. And Hathor is supposed to protect your cattle and your livelihood, your livestock. Remember, God sent plagues against the cattle to show that I'm in control, not Hathor. Okay? The next one is the god Isis, not the Isis we know of today. It's a different Isis. This is the god of medicine and peace. Guess what God gives them? Boils all over their body that cannot be treated by Isis. The next god, they worship the sky. And the word, I don't know if it's nut or nut, but that's how you spell it in the English. Or a nutcase there. And they worship the sky. And guess what God sent out of the sky? They got hail. Remember hail?
Oh, yeah.
So each one is against a god. You see a pattern here. Just a curiosity, okay? The next one they had was a god called Seth. And Seth was the god of storms and disorders. And they said when they saw this huge cloud coming, like in the desert, that the Seth god was mad. But in order to show how God is, he sent, just like a storm, he sent locusts. Because they would come from far and they would cover the land. And the major god was the god Ra, which was their sun god. They worshipped sun. And guess what happened? For 3 days, there was utter darkness in the land except the land of Goshen. Here we have the 9 gods and the 9 solutions that our Lord decided to give to show who is really God.
Now, is it fair to say that none of these happened in the land of Goshen?
Yes, that is correct. They did not. Now, I don't know about the 9, but the other ones did not. Correct. The one that did happen or could happen is the next one. We're going to talk about the death of the firstborn. Okay? So, let's continue. Why am I not touching the last one? Well, I will tell you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and might as well do it. Pharaoh was supposed to be God. Right? He was the representative of God on earth. And the 10th plague touches his house because it takes care of the next Pharaoh. Because the heir to the throne says goodbye. Right? Now, God said, when I send the 10th plague, not only are these guys going to ask you to leave, they're going to send you away. Okay? God said that. So this event becomes so important in the Jewish life that God said, I am creating a nation. I am creating a people group that have been slaves within another country, the most powerful country of that time, and I'm setting you free without one shot being fired. And I am the one who did it. And I want you to remember how awesome and amazing this event is, and therefore rearrange your calendar where this becomes your first spiritual month. Do you understand the significance of it? Okay. So, we have a civil calendar, we have a spiritual calendar. Now, how does this relate to Yeshua? Let's talk about about Passover in relation to Yeshua. The month of Nisan, here's what you're supposed to do. On the 10th of Nisan, you are supposed to get a lamb. The word actually in the Hebrew is the word seh. And it could be a lamb or a goat. So in some translations, if you look, you will find, and let's go to verse 3. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, they are each one to take a lamb. How many of you have lamb or a kid? Lamb. Does anybody have a kid or a goat or something else? No? Okay. A lamb for themselves according to their father's house. So the word there can mean both. It can mean a lamb or a goat. Just want to let you know. And I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, because 3 or 4 weeks from now, I will come back to this word, right? So the word say means lamb or goat. But what has happened is traditionally over time, it has just become a lamb for Passover. But that wasn't the word. Okay? So, they were to take a lamb on the 10th of the month. They are supposed, and it's supposed to be under 1 year old. Very important. Okay? Under 1 year old, and they're supposed to bring it into the house. Okay, now think about it. They didn't have fancy 40-story buildings back then. They had little 1-story homes. Okay? And the families were primarily agrarian. Or they were shepherds back at the time of Yeshua. Or back at the time of Egypt. The daddy says, I'm going to take this lamb, but I'm going to bring it into the house and make it a part of the family. Okay? So think about it. The kids, the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, they start considering this animal as a what? A pet. They start playing with it, start riding it, they start doing all sorts of things to it, putting belts on it, whatever, to make that connection, and the animal becomes really close to the kids in the family. But on the 14th day, you are supposed to take this lamb and do what to it? Kill it. Now, think about a child who is 5 years old or 4 years old who's just got really attached to this animal, and on the 14th day, you're taking it and right in front of the kid, you're going to slit his throat, catch his blood, and cook it. What do you think is going through that person's mind? The horror. That was my pet. You just killed it. Right? Keep that picture in mind. Okay, we will come back and visit that sometime in the future. Okay, now. On the 10th day of the month of Nisan, they're supposed to take a lamb or a goat and supposed to watch over it for 4 days, and on the 14th day, they're supposed to kill it. Okay, here's the way the process works. By the time of Yeshua, we know this for a fact, Passover had become a major meal. It's called a Seder meal. How many of you have had a Seder? Seder. Passover becomes a Seder meal. It's a very, it's become very formalized. And at the time of Yeshua, the person in the family would go, the man would go to Jerusalem on the 10th, and he would buy a lamb from the temple. Okay? And he would bring it back, and he would keep it in the home for 4 days. Now, why is he going to Jerusalem and not just picking one from his flock? I will tell you. Good question. I will tell you in a minute. Okay? But this is what they did. And then they would take the lamb,